Thank you for joining us for the DC Community Heritage Project Showcase. I'm Joy Ford Austin, Executive Director of the Humanities Council of Washington, D.C. The DC Community Heritage Project is a partnership between the Humanities Council and the DC Historic Preservation Office. It is designed to provide information, training, and financial resources to support people who want to tell stories of their neighborhoods and their communities. Funds for DCCHP are provided in part by the Humanities Council and the DC Historic Preservation Office through grants from the DC Commission of the Arts and Humanities and from the National Park Service. This film highlights the grantees selected for the 2013 DC Community Heritage Project grant cycle. All of these projects originated right here in the district and help to preserve the history of Washington, D.C. We appreciate you joining us as we feature these worthy grant recipients and the projects they hold dear to their hearts.
Okay, I'm from the Crestwood Citizens Association, and this is our Crestwood History Project, and we're coming out with a book in the next few weeks. We know about the recent history of our neighborhood, but we really didn't know about the legacy of the neighborhood that goes back hundreds of years. And when we realized what we didn't know, that's when we started the History Project, in order to find something that everyone in Crestwood could hang on to as, you know, this is our history, this is something that keeps us, forges us together.
Well, my project is Citizen SWE, and it is a community photographic portrait project. And what it is doing is just photographing ordinary citizens, but not where they are. We're kind of taking them out of their environmental context and affording them an opportunity to be photographed with a certain amount of flash and dignity. The people that you may see on the streets who may seem to be down and out or whatever, are still human beings with a lot of spirit. And, you know, a lot of times people, we all do it when we walk through the streets, we have another persona a lot of times. And what I'm hoping to do with this project is to basically make the citizens of DC aware of all the different diverse demographics.
Rehoboth Baptist Church Historical Committee is doing a project for our church as we approach our 150th year next year, 2014. So we're documenting the history of the church. We found that there is not much information about Rehoboth Baptist Church out there. And there's a great deal more of the other 9 churches, or most of the other 9. So we're trying to get ourselves on the map, and that will be a benefit to not only our church members and friends, but to the whole community. We certainly expect to put a copy of this book when it is finished at the Martin Luther King Library, where we do have some other things deposited.
I am from the Military Road School Preservation Trust, and the title of our project is the Military Road School Testimonies of the Students Before 1954. For the DC community, I hope it will make them aware of the fact that the Military Road School was born during the era of the Civil War, 1864. Next year, we celebrate our 150th anniversary. And this school is located in Brightwood. It is associated with Fort Stevens. The city needs to understand that our people didn't have a lot of things, but one thing they wanted, one element of freedom, is education. And it was important that we be educated then. It's important that we be educated now, because times are changing and there are lots of different projects and cultures that are going on in this city, our students of all races need to be up to date on. They need to know that the kind of life, as they will see on the testimonies of these students at that school, was interesting, it was a lot of fun, it was tough, but it was a lot of fun, and we learned.
The Dunbar Alumni Federation was incorporated in 2002 for the sole purpose of providing scholarships and support to the students and alumni of the Paul Laurence Dunbar High School. With our Pioneers and Legends project, we hope that the current students at Dunbar will work with us to create or help spread the history of the school. We want them to perform research, work collaboratively to document the research of alumni and those that have done just marvelous things for the city and for the country. We would like to see them get excited or just build up the history of the school and let others know about the alumni by performing research, documenting that research with the thought that eventually we will be able to have a traveling exhibit of our alumni and their contributions to the history of the school. I hope it will help draw the community together. I hope that it will show that the students at Dunbar, while they love their history, they want to share. And I hope that it will teach the city as well as the students at Dunbar that everything isn't a throwaway. There are things that you really, really need to keep, whether you understand it or not. And the history of Dunbar is very valuable. The current process that the students are going through to perform the research is very valuable because that is going to help them throughout life, being able to work collaboratively, actually seeing where they came from, why they're there, why education is important, and what they can do with it. So I would hope that the city as a whole would also draw on that, because eventually those students are going to be out in the city. They're not going to be at Dunbar. They're going to have jobs, they're going to college, or they're going to get a trade, and they're going to be around everyday people. And this research will show them how to pull all of that together.
The Female Union Band Society Cemetery is one of the oldest burial grounds specifically for African Americans. One of the sad legacies of this country's history is that at one point in time, blacks and whites weren't allowed to be buried together. So this cemetery plot, the Mount Zion Baptist Church founded it, members of that founded it. The females of the group pooled their money and paid each week so that there was a place for themselves and their heirs to be buried. Over the years, as the heirs died, there were very few people left, and at one point the land was going to be sold to developers. At the time, there was a group called the Afro-American Bicentennial, and my father and some other people got involved to stop the sale, have the land designated as a National Historic Preservation Site, and have embarked on maintaining and keeping the land out of the hands of developers, and hopefully we will fulfill the vision of turning that property into a memorial park. The members of the Female Union Band Society Foundation really are committed to working with young people. Each year we have young people come and do a ceremony during the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and remembering their ancestors. It's, I think, one of the things that's very critical for each generation to be able to reach back and work with the elders, work with the young folks, and really have an appreciation for all of the community and how connected and interconnected we are. And I think that's one way that not only can we build stronger bonds within the African American community, but also in the community at large, because ultimately we all are seeking the same thing, a peaceful spiritual existence on this earth and happiness beyond.
Project 7 Refocus is run by Commissioner Zena Williams, who I serve on ANC 7B with. And the mission for Project 7 Refocus is to provide social programs as well as truancy programs to try to help families fight some of the disparities that they face every day. Oh, I have big goals and dreams for this. I hope that we teach people, how to do landscaping, urban gardening, all those green skills, especially since we're in a major city. It's invaluable. Most people don't grow up with a big backyard where they can do gardening and things like that. If we can bring that to people and educate people on that whole lifestyle that a lot of people don't get to experience living in a major city, that'd be great. If we can make money while doing it and make this community garden sustainable by earning profits and putting those profits back into the community, that's a goal. And then the job training is a huge win as well, where we're taking something that was blighted, abandoned, and educating people with real skills while they're also uplifting the community at the same time. And we would love to have, the farmers markets out there on the weekends, with the goods that people from the community have grown, or people from our workforce development program have grown, and then are selling. And we not just want to sell them, we have researched it so that the goods could be sold cash, check, credit card, SNAP, as well, so that we can provide the people who live in this food desert, who don't have access to a head of lettuce, they only have access to cigarettes and beer, can get the type of nutrition and do the preventative health that they need.
The name of the organization is the Universal Negro Improvement Association Historical Society Incorporated, and it is an auxiliary of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, founded by the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. We illustrated how Mr. Garvey first came in 1916. I believe it was August the 16th, 1916, Marcus Garvey first came to Washington, D.C. He had not too long been in the United States, and he spoke at the 12th Street Y. So we illustrate that, and then we show how the UNIA grew within Washington, D.C., and the different times that he visited. He visited Washington, D.C. and spoken all over Washington, D.C., especially in the churches and Howard University, the O Street Armory, and things like that for many years. And a charter was given to a division here in 1921 called Division, we call Division 183. And by 1924, we had over 1,000 members and 3 subdivisions in Washington, D.C., and it just grew from there. It is our hope that it hits everyone as a whole, because everyone is still reaping the benefits of the UNIA and reaping the benefits of what Division 183 has accomplished in Washington. And a lot of our history has been forgotten here. So we hope that it will influence all Washingtonians, and especially the Black community.
WSC Avant-Garde is now entering its 24th season, and it is a theater that focuses on the works of Shakespeare and his contemporaries. But this year, specifically this year, we have started a new project. It's called Classics Now, and it is focusing on what we think will be the new classics, the classics for today. This project focuses on 2 Washingtonians that very famous Washingtonians that some people might not know are Washingtonians, and one is Alexander Graham Bell, and the other is Edward Minor Gallaudet. And what we're doing is we're looking at a moment when these two men came into conflict, and the conflict between the two men shaped a neighborhood in Washington, D.C., and that neighborhood is Kendall Green in Northeast. One of the great things about this moment and this project is it echoes things that are going on today in DC. It really is about DC's deaf culture, and I don't know if you know, but DC is the center of deaf culture in America. This is the place. This is where the movers and shakers of deaf culture are. And this play, this project, everything we're doing with it, shows the way that the things that are controversial today in the deaf culture have their root in things that happened, 150 years ago. And that is something that is very, very well known within the deaf community, but isn't so well known in the hearing community.
The Anacostia Community Outreach Center was founded in 1981 by Rose Jones. Rose Jones had volunteered in the neighborhood, in the community, and she recognized that there was an immediate need for services to children. Many children in the southeast Anacostia would go to school hungry, but they would also come home and have nothing constructive to do. So her response was to support the neighborhood and the kids that largely went to Stanton Elementary with breakfast in the morning and giving them a safe haven and educational after-school program. To this day, we still provide those services. Our project, the Langston Dwelling Oral History and Video Project, was a project designed to really capture the rich history of Langston Dwelling. Many people don't realize that Langston Dwelling, which is located in Northeast DC, right off of Benning Road, is one of the oldest public housing developments in the United States. It was originally built in 1938, and it was designed specifically for African American working class. It still rings true today in that largely it services African Americans, but those that are in public housing. What we hope is this becomes a living video and documentary about the rich history of Langston Dwelling. Not only the history of a public housing development, but its impact in really transforming lives of African Americans living in Washington, D.C. This video is important because it's not only telling a history, but it's also sharing that history through the eyes of its children.
The organization was founded by Dr. Aisha Fields, and our objective is to go into oppressed, repressed communities, disadvantaged communities, and to build a human skill bank. So we go into the communities and we solicit volunteers to come in and whatever skill they have to come in to teach classes, to work in the Marcus Garvey Saturday School, to give parenting workshops on education advocacy. We've had community gardens. We've had cooking programs for the students, as well as looking at the conditions of the community in which there are problems such as gentrification, such as individuals getting put out of their homes illegally. So we try to address whatever need in which the community wants us to address. So far, we actually accomplished a lot. Right now, with the documentary, I was able to coordinate with Ms. Karen Gamble, and she is the founder and the director of the High Teen Society. So the High Teen Society is a group of young ladies out of Southeast Washington, D.C. So right now we're working on a documentary project, taking them through the entire process of how to make a documentary, but also putting emphasis on the humanities and technology. So they're going through creating storyboards, they're creating drafts, they're understanding how to put sound into documentaries. But most of all, what we want them to do is to be able to acquire these skills so they can understand how they can use the particular skills to also address some of the needs in their community, such as homelessness, poverty, poor schools, youth not having appropriate places to go around, and actually such as community centers, recreation programs, things like that, other type of programs. So really what we want to see in the end, having them to document who they are now. So 15, 20 years from now, even when they look back at themselves as teenagers, or just as a archive to understand what teenagers were like in DC in 2013. all right? And we want them to be able to tell their story from a teenage perspective, from a perspective of a young adult. And we're not giving them their story. They're creating their own stories.
The Black Student Fund was founded almost 50 years ago in this city to help integrate and expand diversity opportunities at DC area independent schools. And for 50 years, the fund has been assisting families access independent schools, assisting students who are in those schools in our programs being successful, and assisting the schools advance issues of diversity. As we approach our 50th year, we're celebrating the impact not only on our families and our schools, but the impact of the program on the larger DC community. So one of the things we wanted to lead with is to get an understanding and to document and to celebrate the history of the leadership of the organization. The Black Student Fund has had a series of executive directors, board members, board chairs, and others who have not only impacted the organization, but have been an influence in school and education issues across the city. So we want to document that history, we want to celebrate that history, we want to share that history. Over the years, many students who have been in the fund, many of our scholars, have commented on the relationships they've developed with staff and the leadership of the organization and the role that those relationships made in them developing confidence and then overcoming academic challenges and then making decisions about where they want to go to college, what careers they want to do. So the fund has been a resource not only to the community, but more specifically to the families and students who are part of it. We hope that it empowers the DC community to understand the full range of school choice options that are here. Independent schools, charter schools, parochial schools, and public schools, of course. But in addition to that, we want to celebrate the academic success of these students and the impact that these students have had on the community.
Neighborhood Farm Initiative is a pretty young organization. It was founded in 2008 by a woman named Bea Trickett, who was an experienced gardener and had a passion around growing food in an urban space, urban agriculture, and saw a need for educational resources in DC for people to learn how to grow food, and started this organization to make some of those resources more accessible. So up at the Mamie D. Lee Community Garden in Fort Totten, she gained access to some plots in that community garden and started doing educational work days and an educational program called the Garden Education Program to just give people, primarily adults actually, the chance to learn how to grow food in an urban space. It's not just that we're growing food, but that there's these relationships that become established, these connections that come between people just out there in the garden, and seeing that gardening becomes a way for people to build a community and make positive relationships with each other and learn more about their city and the people that live there. For me, that's a particularly exciting part about it, and something that keeps bringing me back. You know, in an urban environment, we don't think of this as a space so much where we can grow our own food. We kind of are trained to think of that as something that happens out in the country, and the food shows up at the store kind of magically. You don't have to know where it came from if you don't want to, but I like to think that what we do gives people a little more awareness and power to do that themselves and enjoy the food, but also, you know, just save money and have better, more nutritious access to better and more nutritious food. I think that is a really important thing that we're trying to do with other organizations like us. There's a lot of people trying to do this right now in the city, and that's an exciting thing.
The Chowan Discovery Group's purpose is to research, document, preserve, and present the history of the multiracial landowning people in northeastern North Carolina. However, we are based in Washington, and we not only do projects in North Carolina, but also here where it is based in upper northwest Washington. We have produced a stage production, we have articles, historical markers in North Carolina, 6 so far, we're proud to say, with probably a few more coming. Well, we want to make the Washington community aware of a neighborhood that's very prominent, but has not been looked at closely, and and those are the composite of neighborhoods in Upper 16th Street. It's a group of communities that had some of the best educated, best placed, most ambitious people of African descent in Washington. It's a very unique community, and it's amazing load of physicians, lawyers, architects, business people, pharmacists, high educators, political leaders, civil rights activists. So people who have done very well for themselves, but also have done quite a bit for the wider community, including in the world. This documentary will be shown at libraries. It will be given to libraries. Of course, it will be at the DC Digital Museum, which is sponsored by the Humanities Council of Washington, D.C. And it will let people know more about these communities in Upper 16th Street. That yes, they did well, but also they contributed a lot. They really made their impact on Washington and the wider community.
The name of my organization is Perspectives of Interfaith Television, and the project is African American Pioneer Muslimas in Washington, D.C., Part 2. In one sentence, we try to dispel the myths and stereotypes of various faith traditions. I am working now on my second film with part of Perspectives of Interfaith, and this film is called African American Pioneer Muslimas in Washington, D.C., Part 2. And Muslimas are the female Muslims, for those that may not understand what Muslimas are. And this film, as the first one, Part 1, is about some of the women in Washington, D.C. that happen to be Muslim, that are in their 80s and 90s. That's what the pioneer part is about. They're elderly women. And it speaks about their spiritual journeys, how many of them came from the church, many of them came from the South to move to Washington, D.C. And when they came here looking for churches, they somehow met, well, not somehow, really, they were encouraged by some family members that were a part of the Nation of Islam to just come and visit the temple and to see if they would like to attend on a regular basis. And it somewhat took them away from the church, and each one of these women have been Muslims for over 50 years. What I want to accomplish with this film is the same as I did with Part 1, to get it out to as many audiences as possible so that people can see and hear our history. One of the things that is missing in a lot of the stories or storytelling in films, both nationally and internationally, is people have lost a sense of who we are as African Americans, and some never knew. So what we're trying to do in a very small scale is to capture the history and the stories, and again, the spiritual journeys of some elderly women who at some point, as myself and you and everyone else, we're going to pass on. And what do we have to show or tell for ourselves? Well, this is one way to be able to give the generations to come and people who are here right now an opportunity to hear our stories, and their stories more specifically.
Welcome back. I'm Joy Austin of the Humanities Council. It's been my pleasure to host you for the DC Community Heritage Project Showcase, a program that features worthy grant recipients and the projects they hold dear to their hearts. Since it began, the DCCHP has awarded over $210,000 in grant funding for more than 100 community projects representing all 8 wards of the district. The results have increased local interest in the history of DC neighborhoods and created a growing body of multimedia resources that have been produced by dedicated community members and now reside at the Humanities Council's DC Digital Museum. But best of all, There is a renewed sense of investment in the preservation of DC's rich community heritage. The DC Community Heritage Project puts the power of telling community history where it belongs, in the hands of residents.